Good morning, everyone. It's Dan Basse and Ben Buckner. Forgive me, I'm in a hotel room in Rochester, Illinois, Rochester, Minnesota. Forgive me that I'm with the Pro Farmer Tour today. They will be ending up here and giving their some yield results and hopefully maybe their final yield results this evening or tomorrow. So we'll see what they all come up with. They've got another day of tour across Iowa, also surveying portions of southern Minnesota. So those will be two key ingredients as we look forward. Grain markets in Chicago are slightly higher. Corn, soybeans, and wheat all higher in a rebound. Ben will go through and give us the Pro Farmer results from Western Iowa and Illinois, but also some relatively good export sales. Again, there's been a bid under these markets from the importer, and that's been very key as they take coverage. The weaker dollar, along with lower prices, has garnered business. And again, when we talk about grinding lower markets, we talk about where end users come in, take coverage on margin. It kind of gives them a place to be buyers, and then the markets ultimately, when their pockets are full, we'll start to see prices heading down, which is a cash-led break. But Ben, why don't you take us to where we are today and what you think about things here going forward?
Yes, of course. So Pro Farmer, about 2/3 of the entirety of samples have been collected now, and still not a lot of insight, though I think the dominant theme yesterday and I think in last night's Pro Farmer meeting is Illinois overall disappointing relative to NASA's all-time record 221 bushel an acre corn yield forecast. So here is what they came out with in the end after yesterday afternoon. Yield of about 200 bushels an acre. That is down 2% year over year. USDA, of course, projecting a yield increase of about 5 bushels an acre. So that is a little misaligned. That and Ohio are kind of the first two states that suggest there may be some revisions to NASA data, though I'd say that what we do, and I think what the analyst community does, once you get Pro Farmer data, is provide some context to it. So we look at year-over-year changes, of course, but we also can put the last couple of decades. What does Pro Farmer think about Illinois? What does NASS think about Illinois in September? And by the final, NASA's corn yield in Indiana or Illinois 221 bushels still fits with this. Maybe it's a little too high. They probably don't revise Illinois upwards, but they are within range. I think it was just kind of new and unexpected by the marketplace. Going through some drier counties, having some issues, yield checks not being exactly what the market had expected, but still a very, very big crop. Even if Illinois were to match last year's record, I think the cash markets, to your point, will be oversupplied come harvest. In Iowa, about what we found, about what was expected, kind of yield growth, kernel count growth, population growth, really across the board in all districts. We're just highlighting District 4 and District 7 here. So yield increases of anywhere between 2 and 5%. Fitting this into historical changes from Pro Farmer and NASS. Also, this fits within NASS's current forecast. So Iowa's corn yield, 220 or better, I think could be fully expected at this point. Iowa will probably take the title as top producing state for corn and soybeans based on weather patterns. And that's exactly what we found at our tour. It's very healthy plants. Population, I think, is going to carry this crop over the edge. And again, I think that Iowa specifically probably can go without any more water through the rest of the growing season. And so subsoil moisture is just exists in abundance. The other side of this, though, I think that even in Illinois, and this was, I think, maybe the real insight that we found on our tour last week, and Pro Farmer has found so far this week, is soybean yield potential, at least. Pod counts just massive. This is Illinois and Iowa up, 4 to 15% from last year when you think about just pods that exist within a 3x3 area. So if there is kind of regular rains, extended growing season, I think it's the soybean yield that probably is at risk of being revised higher from NASS, at least in September. So that, I think, collides with potentially lower exports. So I guess the summer we've got, again, as Pro Farmer is about 2/3 of the way done, is maybe some yield caps in the far eastern Midwest and in Illinois. But overall, I don't think there's much to be expected from NASS's yield in September. Maybe it's a bushel lower, but this is still going to be a pretty monster corn crop, a lot of supply. Something like 18 billion bushels will be available in the next 60 or 70 days. Export sales, to your point, especially the grain markets, corn specifically. Corn does look pretty competitive, or is offered at parity with a lot of other origins, and we have seen that translate into, at least from traditional buyers, just pretty incredible demand. So last week, corn sales were 113 million bushels. pretty special number for new crop, even as we're getting close to September 1st. And total commitments for corn now 657 million bushels. We've only seen numbers like this a couple of times, one being the sort of the bull market of 2021. So corn demand does exist. I think pace analysis, USDA, at least in September, probably will keep its new crop forecast where it is, record just about 2.9 billion bushels. But to your point, yeah, I think that the demand does exist under the market, and corn's not expensive. It is competitive, so I think we have seen traditional buyers kind of step on the gas pedal in terms of extending forward coverage, especially with trade policy uncertainty. But I still think it's the soybean demand story that's a concern to us. So we are finding some forward coverage from end users, though I got to mention China still has yet to buy a single bushel of US beans. And also for the last couple of weeks has not had any outstanding sales left to ship. So China has left the U.S. soybean market. And as we have talked about this week and the last couple of weeks, it seems like that might be the case for another 30 days. How much of South America's soybean supply can China squeeze for its autumn needs is a concern. But new crop soybean sales 61 million bushels, 42 million. New crop soybean sales were 42 million bushels. So rising, expanding seasonally, but a year ago in the same week it was 61 million bushels. We kind of started to accelerate soybean sales about the early part of August. We're not quite seeing that acceleration yet. Anyway, if we, excluding outstanding old crop sales, total U.S. new crop commitments pretty meager 215 million bushels. That is the lowest since 2019, and generally at the low end of the historical range going back to about 2005 or so. The same pace analysis, USDA is overly optimistic, we think, with the numbers that we have today with respect to new crop U.S. soybean export demand. This is a concern. I mean, this number will change if you don't see some improvement by the end of September or early October. But we also have new climate forecasts, 3-month, 30-day, even 6-month forecasts from NOAA. They're all kind of saying the same thing. Maybe some dryness during the September and autumn months across the southern plains, but also no real risk of frost. Frost risks are also very, very limited in any year anyway, but it does look like we're going to have an extended growing season, mild temperatures through the end of September. And judging by, the crop progress from places like the Dakotas and Minnesota, I think those crops will reach maturity, corn anyway, by October 1st. So not a lot of risk there. Drought forecast also, NOAA does not expect drought development in the next 30 days. And so I think that's key when we think about, dry weather forecast in the U.S. for the next couple of weeks. The net change in soil moisture does not look to be very robust, so just keep that in mind. Kind of lastly, just a note on seasonal trends. So it's our idea is that I think you got to get into the fields, have kind of bulk combine data available before you can bottom a market like corn. And seasonally, it doesn't typically happen, confirming seasonal lows maybe until the middle part or latter part of September. But just wanted to kind of explain the carries here. So, even December at 405 to 410 is already kind of accounting for this, post early harvest recovery. And so it's still kind of hard for us to expect these Chicago corn to add a lot of premium. Again, this carry is already accounting for a lot of the seasonal moves in corn. And if we haven't scored lows yet in September, probably not in December as well, I do think risk leans a bit to the downside again until you just know exactly how many bushels have to be sorted out by the cash market, given what we have talked about in terms of kind of stressing storage capacity in a lot of places. So I think what's new today is your pretty solid export sales in corn, concerning export sales in soybeans, and Pro Farmer, capping yield in Illinois, but overall not providing a lot of compelling evidence to suggest NASS is too high with its national number.
I think that's right, Ben. I think what Pro Farmer is telling me is that it's a big crop, right? At the end of the day, Illinois may lose as much as 100 million bushels. Let's call it 75 to 100, which takes the U.S. yield down maybe a bushel. So instead of 188, maybe we're down at a 187 or something like that. But at the end of the day, that's still too much corn. So we kind of see the range in corn yields, 186 to maybe 190 as it sits today, heading into the September number. I think Pro Farmer's kind of validated that. Soybeans could be the sleeper, but we need 1 or 2 more rains to really bring all those pods and all those 3 bean pods home. So that's kind of where my head goes. So we end up with markets where rallies can't carry through to the upside. Brakes are probably supported by end users like the importers, and we end up with a lot of this choppiness until we get the cash markets really transitioning fully to new crop and leading us down. Any final
I think
comments,
it's
Ben?
exactly right. We'll see. We've seen, again, like yesterday, we had a bit of a recovery, failed at chart resistance, we ended flat. I think that's still probably a pretty heavy weight, again, until we get into September, maybe early October.
Yeah, I think that's right. Though, again, in the back of my mind, it's losing China that buys 800 or 850 million bushels of U.S. beans every year is a kahuna. We need to get them coming at us. If we don't, that is a bearish risk for the soybean market. Everybody be well. Have a great Thursday. We're higher overnight. A lot of green here this morning. Let's see if we can carry through with it through the day, and we'll kind of go from there and be back on Friday. Have a good Thursday, everyone. Bye-bye.